Please be seated. Good morning, everybody. I'm sure many of you have had the same experience that I have. If you travel overseas and you say you come from Taiwan or you live in Taiwan, I'm sure most people's first reaction, if they don't already know, is, oh yes, I've been to Bangkok. I've been there many times. And then you realize, of course, they imagine you are in Thailand riding around on an elephant all day long. Then you tell them Taiwan, and then they say, oh, not Taiwan, what a dangerous place. Every time I see the news, it's full of typhoons or earthquakes. Is that your experience? More or less. And my response always when I go back to England is, when you're in Taiwan looking at the news of England and you see all the murders and all the terrorist attacks and Brexit and the disaster that the government is creating over there, actually England seems far more dangerous place to live than Taiwan. So that's true. It's true, of course, that if you do live in Taiwan and you do happen to be here during the summer months, then you do have to get used to typhoons and earthquakes. And one of the things you learn very quickly is that in an earthquake, the safest place to be is outside. And if you're in a typhoon, the safest place to be is inside. So, of course, you just hope and pray that there will not be an earthquake and a typhoon happening at the same time. When two crises or emergencies happen at the same moment, how do you decide which one is more important? What should you do? What should your response be? How do you react? Typhoons we know because they come on the map, don't they? We know one's coming and you're all huddled inside and then, oh, there's an earthquake. What do? Do you go out? Do you stay in? What happens? This is not quite the same situation that we find in today's gospel story, but for Martha, it maybe felt like we're having a typhoon and an earthquake both happening at the same time. A double crisis, a double emergency. Here she is in her own home, and a VIP guest, Jesus himself, has just turned up. What should she do? Help! When a guest comes to visit, she is duty-bound to provide hospitality to her guest. And this is one very special guest. It's Jesus. Should she start cooking? Or should she sit down and talk to Jesus? Which one is more important? What is the top priority? You need to have a little background to this story. We know that Martha had a sister called Mary, and she also had a brother called Lazarus. And he is famous, Lazarus is famous because Jesus raised him from the dead. Mary is famous because she's the same Mary who anointed Jesus with perfume and wiped his feet with her hair. Now that anointing was the day before Palm Sunday. Jesus was preparing to enter Jerusalem. And John's gospel says that Jesus visited their home. Lazarus was there, Martha served, and Mary anointed Jesus' feet with oil. Everything seemed good. But that was much later than today's story. In today's story, which is much earlier in Jesus' ministry, Jesus has come to visit Martha and Mary. We don't know anything. We don't know where Lazarus might be. At his feet, probably not. But this is what's happened. Poor Martha, meanwhile, is going crazy. How am I going to get everything done? The rice needs cooking, the vegetables need peeling, the meat needs whatever you do to meat, cooking, the dessert, the coffee, the wine, everything. The table needs setting with all the plates. And my sister, all she's doing is relaxing with that guy Jesus. It is too much. Help! So in the middle of Jesus sharing time, you can imagine Jesus is very calm, cool, calm and collected. Mary's listening to him. And in comes Martha. She crashes into the gathering and directly appeals to Jesus to help her by kind of sending Martha back into the kitchen. But instead, we see how Jesus answers her. Martha, Martha, you're worried and upset about many things. Only one thing is needed. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her. You will notice the story in the Bible stops here. We do not know how Martha responded to Jesus' words. Did Martha then stop immediately, drop everything, everything's in the kitchen, forget all that, just sit down and listen to Jesus? Is that what she did? We don't know. Maybe Peter and the other disciples heard Martha's distress and leapt up and said, "Don't worry, Martha, we'll go to the kitchen and we'll get those vegetables and rice finished." Maybe that's what happened. I guess not, because if it had, it probably would have been mentioned in this story. But we do know from John's Gospel that Jesus' return visit to the family just before his death, that was the time when Martha served and Mary anointed Jesus' feet with oil and wiped his feet with her hair. On that occasion, it seems there was no problems between Martha and Mary. In fact, on that occasion, Martha was not the one complaining. It was Judas. That was the day when Judas, the disciple who went on to betray Jesus, he was complaining about the waste of money. All that perfume cost to anoint Jesus' feet. It could have been given to the poor. On that occasion, Martha is clearly still serving the visitors, this time calmly and patiently. So what can we learn from today's story? Are Martha and Mary just two sisters with different personalities and priorities? Is Martha one of those normally very jolly, friendly ladies who loves cooking, talking, eating with all her friends? And Martha's one of those dreamy, artistic, intellectual people? Or is this just a question of poor time management skills? One of the things about time management is that you know how to make priorities. You know how to be flexible, to delegate tasks to others. Maybe that's something Martha hasn't learned yet. Or maybe Jesus has suddenly arrived, and as you know, there's no phone call or anything to warn that he's coming. He's just turned up, and it's a crisis. Maybe she just panicked. Or then again, maybe it's a problem in family relationships, the division of labor within the family. As you know, any group of people living together, certain things have to be done to make sure the household runs smoothly. Someone takes out the trash, someone feeds the dog, someone cooks, cleans, whatever. Maybe Martha is just conscious that Mary is just lazy, all the time wanting to sit and listen. Or maybe Mary is so fed up by having a big bossy sister that she escapes to the quiet of the front room with the visitors. Before we come to any more lessons we might learn, let's look at the Old Testament reading we had today from Genesis. It's also one about hospitality. This time is about Abraham. At that time in history, the people of Israel were a wandering people. Abraham had been called to leave his homeland, and at this point in the story, Abraham and all his household is camped under the oak trees at Mamre. It's the heat of the day. Things are very quiet. All the people and the animals are feeling drowsy, maybe taking a little nap, and suddenly 3 VIP visitors show up. Now, they turn out to be angels, men sent by God, but Abraham doesn't know this at that point, doesn't realize it at first. He sees them. He runs towards them. He welcomes them with water and food. He gets his household, rouses his household up to start cooking, and he gets everyone organized. There's no panic. He's clearly an expert in time management, household management, and hospitality. And the result? He gets the amazing news that his wife, Sarah, was going to give birth to a son. You never know what to expect when you welcome visitors into your home. And when we welcome God, amazing things can happen. Back to today's gospel story, and Jesus' response to Martha is not that her work and family and hospitality are unimportant. Of course they're important. It's just that Jesus is urging her to choose him first and let all these other things take their place in accordance with that choice. Martha had assumed that she could invite Jesus into her house and into her life and then return to business as usual. After all, it's her house. It says quite clearly it's Martha's house. She gets to make the decisions. Once Jesus is invited in, things change. All of life is changed for Martha, just as all of life was about to change for Abraham. And it's true for us as well. Jesus is not like any other guest. Many Christian homes in Taiwan have the big plaque, a big notice saying, "Christ is the head of this house." When Jesus is invited in, there is only one place for him, and that is as head of the house. Jesus becomes the head of the house. Life will change when we invite Jesus into our homes and lives. And if our lives don't change, then we need to stop, sit down at Jesus' feet and listen to him and allow him to be the head of the house. Let him be in charge of our lives. One of the greatest challenges for all Christians, clergy and laity is to get our priorities right in this respect. Let's consider 4 things: God, family, work, and church. What order should these things... Sorry about that, that's the microphone. What order should these 4 things be in to get a right balance in our life? We're talking about giving of our time and our energy. The story of Abraham and the story of Martha and Mary teaches us that our number 1 priority clearly should be God, clearly should be Christ. So what about number 2, 3, and 4? Some of us find it really hard. Many of us find ourselves just like Martha. What should we do? Which is more important? Should church be more important? Is church, is work, is family more important? I don't know about you, but a lot of people have this same problem. It is especially true for clergy and church leaders. That means vestry members, wardens, leaders of small groups, people who are on duty today doing things. They have responsibilities to serve the church. But, as you know, most church events happen in the evenings and weekends. So when a family event comes up or a work event comes up, how do you decide which one to choose? What is your priority? What do you do when a family wedding is scheduled for a Sunday? Or on a day when there's a big, important church event? Or a classmate invites you to his daughter's wedding, and as he came to your daughter's wedding, so you really have to go to his daughter's wedding. Or a graduation, or a family reunion, or a vacation trip, or whatever it is. When 2 important events coincide at the same time and both groups of people expect you to attend, how do you decide and how do you face up to your responsibilities towards each group of people? The most important thing for us, of course, is that God should be number 1. And when we make God, when we make Jesus our main priority in our lives and homes, then everything else will fit into place. Numbers 2, 3, and 4 in that list of work, family, and church, they will fit into place when we learn to sit at Jesus' feet and listen to him. So I encourage you to go home today, pray that collect again, and again, and again, asking God to have compassion on our weaknesses. Jesus is waiting to be invited into our homes and into our lives. And when that happens, our lives and our homes will never be the same again. Amen.